Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So about a week ago, Bloomberg News did a piece on South Korea. South Korea is having a birth rate crisis, right? The average family is having something like zero point 0.8 kids per family, and they're having a birth rate crisis. And they have a radical solution. I don't think it's radical, but the news is calling it radical, that the government is going to step in and fund some blind dates. Now, my conclusion to that program, in one sentence, it's a good idea, but poor execution. Let's put it that way. And I'll get to why in a second. The crux of why is that everybody dates differently. And I think the government should just let go. And I'll get to how I could do that in a moment. Now, I first came up with this idea actually many years ago, before we even called it a radical idea. I was 16 years old. I was working my first job, and my dad was teaching me how to file my taxes. This was before the days of all this great software that we now have. So you got to actually see how your taxes were calculated. We got this big booklet at the library, if I remember correctly. And my dad was trying to impress me about how much less my taxes would be after I got married. I had a favorite professor at college, and he was single. He was, I want to say, in his early 30s, he was single. And it hit me that, gee, that doesn't sound very fair, because imagine he wants to go dating, but he's got to pay an extra $5,000, $10,000 a year in taxes, whatever it is. And that takes away money that he could potentially go out to date, right? And it just didn't seem fair, because if the government loves marriage so much, why does it put a barrier to getting there, but then give you all these benefits after you get there? It didn't seem very fair to me. Long story short, it turns out my professor was either solosexual or gay anyway, so it didn't really, what I thought wasn't really accurate, but it still seemed unfair. Now, fast forward 20 years later, now South Korea is finally catching up to what I thought about when I was 16. I think the problem, I was very introverted. I didn't allow mainstream media to brainwash me, and that's why I came up with the idea so many decades ago that even South Korea is just catching up to. Now, why do I think this is not the best idea? I mean, I love the idea, but it's not the best execution. Go watch that video. They were setting up these speed dating events. And my thought is that not everybody dates similarly. Let me talk about the last couple of times I found love. I was teaching at Washington Tech, and one day I was sitting in the computer lab when I met a girl, and she was working on some computer graphics. And the computer lab is very quiet, just like this computer lab, right? Not a whole lot of noises, and I could actually be soft-spoken to her. I remember my first conversation to her was about some cool graphics that she had on her desktop screen, right? Good luck trying to do that at a bar or at a nightclub, right? And other people might find love at a bar or nightclub where they can scream their lungs out, right? Some people like to go to a Taylor Swift concert, right? I'm sure people have found love there too. But it just goes to show everybody does it differently. Now, how would I recommend the government handle this? Well, let me tell you about a recent frustration that I have. So many of my peers who are single, they end up having to work a lot of additional hours because their colleagues are taking care of their kids. How about we see to it that everybody, we have some equality in working conditions, right? We talk a lot about gender equality. We talk about a lot about racial equality. Why not about marital status equality? That doesn't get a lot of airtime in our society, right? I talk to a lot of people who might be a good fit for me, but both of us are always too busy for various things. I want to see some equality there. And, why don't we, because, singles, we don't have somebody to share our health insurance with. Why don't we take some of that money we're not spending on health insurance and use it to fund some of our dates, right? Wouldn't that be cool? I'm just throwing that out there, right? on the government level of things, when I die, my imaginary spouse isn't going to get a lot of survivor benefits. So you're saving a lot of money. Why don't we take some of that money and fund some of our dates, right? We should make dating tax deductible, right? That would be a perfect solution in my opinion, much more so than having the government just go out there and take you on this blind date, right? Because let's face it, I think the people know how they want to date a lot more so than the government, right? I'm a little bit upset about this whole. Next year we'll have this Secure 2.0, where the government matches your retirement funding, and you can even use that to pay off your student loans. I don't have any student loan debt anymore. I'd rather take that to go fund my dating. I really would. That would be the best investment I could make. At least with the Savers Credit, you could actually take what you saved and actually go out and fund your dates, right? With Secure 2.0, you can't do that anymore, right? I think that's a step in the wrong direction. But I think the people know how they want to date much more so than the government. I'm glad the government is finally acknowledging that marriage doesn't just happen and not just rewarding people after the fact, but helping them get there. I'm glad the government at least acknowledges that part. But I think the government then has to step back and allow people to use the resources to do that, right? And I'm proposing a solution here. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show.